Welcome back. Now we'll go over 3.3 and 3.4, and that'll get us through this week fairly good until we get more direction from the government about what we're supposed to be doing. Are we supposed to necessarily be learning from home in this way? I don't know. Do I think the website the government produced is going to be perfect for us? No.
Didn't you already say that last
So,
time?
well, I was doing another video, Morgan. So I think this way is easier for us to continue our learning. If I can attempt to make the transition a little easier, I'd like to do that. So my kids have joked that this is called Math with Mel, and I think they think I'm a YouTuber now, even though about 10 people have watched the videos. Okay, 3.3, 3.4, again, very wordy, very little math involved in the first half of chapter 3. This is all about collecting the data. We will analyze the data mathematically, 100%, starting in 3.5. Okay, so at the beginning, we're really just looking at how do we now collect our own data. So you would have to come up with a survey of questions that you might want to ask someone about, you know, what's something of interest to you, what do you want to find out something about, and then see, is it valid, the way that people are responding. So there's two main types of questions you can ask. One is called an open response. And an open response is a question like, what is your favorite food? Leave it blank. Well, with collecting data like that, you could survey 30 people and get 30 different answers. My favorite food is steak. My favorite food is French fries. My favorite food is chocolate.
You learned about that.
Okay? That is all different responses. How are you going to analyze something when you get all different responses? So we discourage open questions. Okay? Open questions are hard to get accurate results from. Very, very difficult to get accurate results from. So anytime you've ever done a survey and they ask you to explain something, I'm not sure that that is being used to get good data. It really isn't. It's not the best method for us to find something out. What we want is a closed question. A closed question means we provide the answers and they just get to answer it maybe multiple choice style, maybe check all that apply, maybe rank or rate in order of least to greatest in terms of your preference or what you think about something. Those things we can get good results from. We can then graph them, we can then do some math, find the mean, the median, the mode, the standard deviation, the variance, unending statistical measures that we can take based on closed data, especially if it's quantitative closed data. Quantitative closed data, we can really get some good results from. So inside the note, there's a bunch of different types of closed questions that I give you responses for. Again, you can read all this on your own. I just want to make sure that we have a general understanding. An information question is fact. So something like, what grade are you in? It's not something that's an opinion. This is fact. What is your gender? What is your age? Well, not what is your favorite animal. Okay, that's an information type question. A checklist question is check all that apply. So if you were talking about food again, you could say, check all foods that you would consider, check all the foods that you like, okay? And you can check as many as you want. So it may say cookies, ice cream, sardines, peanuts.
Cookies and ice creams and peanuts.
Put cookies and ice cream. What about pickles?
No.
Pickles?
Okay.
Morgan's not picking sardines, so she would pick the three that she likes: cookies, ice cream, and peanuts, and she is saying no to sardines.
I do not like sardines.
Okay, that's a checklist. Don't talk like that. You sound like a baby. Okay, there's also two types that are very similar, but they have some nuances that are different. One's called a ranking question, and one's called a rating question. So a ranking question will list some options. So of the following foods, sardines, peanuts, cookies, ice cream, and pickles, rank them from 1 to 5, 1 being your favorite. So Morgan, what's your favorite?
I love all of those.
Of all those?
I forgot the option.
Ice cream, cookies, sardines,
Ice
peanuts,
cream.
pickles.
Ice cream.
Ice cream. So she would rank ice cream number 1. She would then go on to rank her second favorite, her third favorite. And what's your least favorite?
Sardines.
Sardines would be number 5. Okay? So that's a ranking. You list the options and each option only gets 1 number associated with it. Okay? It's either a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4, or 5. Now it's not limited to 1 to 5. You could say 1 to 10 and list 10 options, 1 to 7 and list 7 options. That's fine. That's okay, Morgan. Okay, so for rating, that means you would list the options again: cookies, sardines, ice cream, and each one of those options would have the number 1 to 5 across them. And you say, Rank these from 1 to 5, 5 being you really, really, really like, 1 being you don't like at all. So say your favorite's ice cream, but it's still only a 4, then you can rank it a 4. It's not your favorite food, but you like it. It was the best of the options you gave us, but it's still not perfect. And say sardines, you say, I don't hate sardines. They were my least favorite, but maybe I'd rank them a 2. That gives you a different type of option for that type of question where it's not a hard ranking where you think, oh, they hate sardines. Maybe they liked all 5 of those foods, but just sardines was their least favorite.
Yeah.
So this gives you a little bit of a different look at some of those answers. Number answers. These are things we can start to analyze. We can start comparing the options on them. Okay, so oftentimes we like numerical answers because those are easy to do math with. It's very hard to do math with a word like sardines. I mean, you can rank them, you can do math based on the number of people that pick that their favorite versus the opposite, but not as much. Okay, when you create these questions, you have to be very sensitive to your audience. So you have to not use jargon, and jargon's like short forms for words that people don't understand. So you want to avoid stuff like that, where not the entire population will know what you're talking about. So we talk about, like even in school, we've been talking about OECTA, OSSTF, all this stuff. Well, people that aren't in education don't know what those union acronyms are. You can't use that in a survey unless you're 100% sure everyone in the sample you're taking would understand what that short form means. Okay, so don't use abbreviations. You want to use full English sentences with the full word. You want to be sensitive if you're doing a survey about something health related. Or life and death related, you want to be sensitive to the way you're asking those questions so you're not going to offend anyone. And you want to be sure not to use leading statements. And a leading statement is something like, if I said that 80% of dentists recommend Colgate toothpaste, and then I say, what type of toothpaste do you think is the best? And I list, all the types of toothpaste. I've led you to select Colgate by saying ahead of time that 80% of dentists like Colgate. Watermelon's your favorite type of toothpaste?
Yeah.
Okay, sit down more. Okay, so you just have to be careful in the way you set those up. And when we get to the project, which maybe we'll have to start sooner than later, you're going to come up with 10 different questions, and you're going to survey 30 to 50 people on those questions. So this is a skill we need to have some general understanding of before you can do the major project. Okay, the other thing you have to be aware of is if you are doing a sample, it has to be bias-free. And there are 2 things, this is important, 2 things that make sure that your sample is bias-free.
You can't have
It
peanuts at
has
school.
to be a large sample. And this idea of large sample, what is large? Well, I don't know, if you're doing a survey of people in Canada, and we have 35 million people, then that's going to be a different proportion than if we're doing a survey of St. John's. Okay, so large enough is going to be based on what the population is. Your sample size has to be based on the population. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of rules and statistics about what would be considered large enough and what wouldn't be. Okay, and it has to be representative. You just can't ask the people of Ontario about their feelings when you're doing a survey of Canada. The needs in Canada are vast as you go from coast to coast, north to south. Okay, so in order to be representative, you have to survey people in proportion. Should Ontario get a bigger say than New Brunswick? For sure, because there's a larger population. But should they get all the say? No. Okay, so you have to make sure it's representative. If we're doing a survey on our scale at St. John's, you better be representative of all the grades. So that would make your sampling technique. That's why I was so interested in the stratified sampling, because that is more representative. Okay, the types of bias that may exist, and some of them will be your fault, the way you asked the question, and some of them will be the responder's fault. So the 3 main types are called sampling, response, non-response. Definitions, examples, all in the note for you to look at. Sampling bias is 100% your fault. That means you asked bad questions, basically. You asked poor questions. You were maybe insensitive. The way you sampled was poor. You just surveyed your friends in grade 12. That's not representative. So you have failed in your ability to ask a good survey. Okay, so that's called sampling bias. The way you sampled was flawed, whether through the questions or the sampling technique. Okay, it has also been called, and sometimes the textbook will refer to it as measurement bias. And it's called measurement bias because your thing is either under or overrepresented. Okay, Marty.
That was my
It's okay,
lover.
don't worry. Under or overrepresented. Okay? Now, response bias is normally the person's fault that's responding. So when they say that they gave misleading answers, and it's not always that they're purposefully doing it. Maybe they're embarrassed. So we've had questions in the past where people have been interested in getting results on people's drug use or alcohol use or whether they vape or not. And you hand out a survey in their classroom where their teacher's present, maybe they're not going to answer honestly. So it's response bias because their responses aren't truthful. And again, it might not be malicious. It might just be that you've picked a sensitive topic, and even though the survey should be anonymous, they're still embarrassed to answer truthfully. So you have to be very careful what you're asking and the way you ask it to make sure that you can get the most accurate answers possible. Okay, so again, it's all about the way they responded and their answers being misleading. I mean, there are jokesters that are going to answer wrong no matter what. So sometimes when you do that, you have to analyze, is this survey specifically a very biased survey? And if so, you take it out of your sample. And you need to take note, there are outliers. I have removed these because of biased responses, and you have to give reasons why you think they're biased. Because it's not up to, you're not the judge of whether the answers are correct or not. But if you can see a very strong sway to it not being accurate, then that's okay.
My heart.
Your heart looks really good, Morgan. That's our homeschooling art for the day. Different colored hearts. Okay, take it. Okay, non-response bias is actually one of the biggest problems, and this occurs when people don't actually respond to questions. They leave them blank, or they just choose not to. How many times has someone called your house to ask you questions about something, maybe about an upcoming election, maybe something that's legitimate? I'm not talking telemarketer. They're just trying to get information, and you hang up on them, or your parents say, I'm not interested. Well, now that's a non-response. So it is a voluntary sample that's being taken when someone calls your house, but it is non-response, yes.
I use every yellow.
Okay, why are you talking like a baby?
Yellow.
You're talking like a baby still.
Except yellow and
Okay.
orange.
So you have to be careful. If I was to do a survey and stand in front of the cafeteria and say, I want to hand out a survey to every 5th person that walks in, how many kids are going to look at me and just walk through anyway? They don't care that I'm taking a survey of them. So that gives you non-response bias. So you just have to be aware of these biases being present, and then you try to avoid them the best you can. Okay, Morgan. Do you want to show a toy or something? Or do you want to talk in a normal voice? Okay, what are you going to show them? Come on, hurry up. This is what?
My first teddy bear.
Your first teddy. Why are you talking like a baby?
Because I'm a baby.
You're not a baby.
My first teddy bear.
Okay. And say, see you next week.
See you tomorrow. Today.
Okay, bye guys.
Making
Keep safe.
another video.